What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's happening to NIO, Tesla, SPY, and a couple of other tickers, and break down what's happening with the economic calendar moving forward, what's going on with some important data coming out that's going to shake the entire markets tomorrow, and what you should be watching for as time progresses. But before I begin the devil's information, before I break down the technicals for NIO, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner. Take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Weeble and deposit $500, you guarantee 20 free stocks, and the offer ends in just about 1 week from now. Anyways, for NIO, something not so great happened to the share price, if I'm going to be 100% honest and transparent. I was talking about how we had this inverse cup and handle like structure after the double top, and I said that if NIO lost 4.7, I expected to start coming all the way down. So NIO came down to gap support at 4.35. If we lose that, we're going to be dipping to the low fours to come down and fill the gap. So that's going to be very important. We'll be watching to see if NIO ends up losing the support. As of right now, we're looking more bearish overall, technically speaking, but the overall market is looking bullish. We're looking at SPY making a big move to the upside. Same thing with the QQQ. Tesla came down a bit because of a new lawsuit and some negative news. So kind of mixed overall, but Apple, Nvda, SPY, the QQQ, they're all holding up very, very well, whereas NIO and Tesla are a little bit weak. Now, tomorrow is going to be an absolutely massive day for the entire stock market because we have huge data coming out. Tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, June 12th, 2024. For the American markets, do not forget that before the market opens, we have CPI data coming out. CPI is going to be absolutely massive. We're expecting year over year to be around 3.5 to 3.6%, month over month for core to be around 0.3%. And that was actually core I was talking about in the beginning. For all items CPI month over month, we're looking for about 0.1%, and year over year, looking at 3.4%. So, in my opinion, from the data that I'm looking at, there's a good chance that inflation for all items is going to be decent, but I'm not too sure about core CPI. Looking at the ISM services and other factors, I'm not as sure about core, but CPI should be completely fine, at least for all items, in my personal opinion, based off the data I am seeing. Now, moving forward, CPI is not the only reason why tomorrow is going to be huge. After CPI comes out at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Fed is going to be announcing its interest rate hike decision, and also what's going on with their economic projections report. Then after that, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech at 2:30 p.m., and the entire market is going to go berserk. So get ready for some crazy price action tomorrow. We have CPI and FOMC on the same day. Now, when it comes to CPI, okay, one thing worth noting is that there's a high correlation between crude futures and CPI, and we already have the data out for May and June for crude futures. We're just waiting for CPI to come out. Now, notice that historically, these come up together, they've dipped together, they pushed together in 2008, came down, up, down, and they follow very similar trends, especially when you zoom into more recent data. But notice that they were actually, they peaked together in May of 2022 when inflation was at its highest, and they started coming down together. They did come up a bit earlier towards the end of last year. And this year we had another spike before they're now coming down. So I noticed that there was a little spike for the month of April. CPI was decent, but for May and June, okay, the data is showing that crude has been dropping. Gas prices have dropped a bit. All right. What does this mean? This increases the odds of CPI for all items being decent. So there's a good chance we're going to get a decent CPI, but I'm not too sure about core CPI. That's what I'm not as sure about. This will affect the Fed's decision. If we get a cool CPI, there's a good chance the Fed is going to be more dovish and the market's going to rally. If we don't get a good CPI, I think that's going to affect how the Fed ends up talking. Right now, there's a 99.4% chance the Fed keeps rates the same. I think they still will keep rates the same, but we'll have to see if anything else changes given the data. We're going to be looking to see what the Fed is projecting. Now, for the fear and greed index, right now, this is at neutral, still kind of close to the fearful side. As the market's continuing to rally, we'll see if this kind of shifts anymore. As of right now, things remain neutral. Momentum is still extremely greedy. The puts and call option positioning is also dropping more as we're starting to see more puts being closed. And right now, greed is making up the majority of sentiment. For earnings, don't forget that we actually have just a few like Dave and Buster's coming out tomorrow. We just had Oracle, but nothing too crazy. This is what the calendar looks like for the week. For news about NIO, Bank of America just increased its price target on NIO. Before they were saying it's going to run up to about $5.90. Now they're saying $6. Not bad, but for now it doesn't really affect NIO because the short term is still looking kind of bearish. Despite all these new collaborations and such, I already talked about this yesterday. NIO is collaborating with GAC Energy to improve their charging networks and share infrastructure. We had 66 million volume, so volume is going up and we're selling in a more aggressive manner. We lost some key support, so the short volume is going up. That's why we're seeing more shorting, and shorting is making up the majority of volume. Bank of America Securities is neutral as of right now. The price price ratio is dipping right now as NIO is losing strength. And also, we tend to see green only about on Wednesdays about 55% of the time. But this doesn't really change much because right now, NIO is still showing some weakness. So, what do I see for the share price? Here's my honest opinion, guys. I'm going to be 100% honest with everyone. NIO looks bearish. I'm not going to BS anything. I've been saying this since we got this rejection off $5 that I've turned a bit more bearish on NIO. I also called out this inverted cup and handle. So I'm not always bullish on NIO. I know a lot of people in the comments say I am, but it's not actually true. I'm telling you right now, it's going to likely dip, and that's how it's looking so far. Technically speaking, we are looking like we might come down to fill this gap. I think NIO is going to fill the gap to the low fours. So that's because earnings was not that good for the short term, but their overall projections for the next quarterly reports and deliveries is reported to be very strong. So I'm hoping for a big bounce as we get closer to later on, but for now we are dipping. Now, whether NIO dips or not depends on CPI. If we get a very hot CPI, it is possible NIO is going to continue to fall to fill its gap. If CPI is decent, we could get a rebound on NIO. It's possible, a very temporary one. But regardless if we get a small rebound or not, I still see us coming down to fill this gap. Either tomorrow we come down to fill the gap or we get a temporary rebound and then we come down to fill the gap. I'll be watching this very, very carefully. For SPY, it's very simple. Technicals are bullish. SPY close towards the all-time high, almost breaking its all-time high. It's a monster. It looks very bullish. It looks like it wants to rip to the 540s. Whether this hits 540 or not depends on CPI. If CPI is decent, we're going to be pushing to the 540s. If not, we're going to be getting a rug pull back down to 530. Technicals look bullish, but they're not the full picture, so we'll just have to wait and see. So we'll see what CPI gives us, but right now technicals do look bullish. Bitcoin is trying to rebound a bit. The overall structure on Bitcoin is more bearish after we formed the double top. It is going to test its 67,789 area. We'll see how it ends up reacting to 200 EMA. So I'll watch and see, and we'll have to be very, very patient at least moving forward. But for now, that's how things are looking for Bitcoin. On top of all of this, for Nvda is trying to hold its 20 EMA around 120. If we hold this, we could try to rebound a bit towards 122. If we lose this, we'll be dipping lower. It all depends. We are actually looking more bullish overall. The trend is still intact, but this is going to depend a lot on what's announced with the very, very big report. So with earnings coming out, we'll see if we get a continuation higher and continue to push towards all-time highs, or if Nvidia gets the rug pull and retraces to its 50 EMA. As of right now, it looks more bullish, but we'll see what CPI gives us. QQQ, it looks like it's on a monstrous pump right now. We have resistance at 468. I'll be watching this very carefully. I did actually mark this level down. If that breaks, we're easily going all the way up to about 471 or even higher levels than that. So in my opinion, QQQ is very bullish looking. There's no sign of it actually slowing down quite yet. Will we break into the 470s? It's possible. Will we get a rejection, start dipping back down to the 462? It's also possible. But overall, we are looking bullish in my personal opinion. And I think there's a good chance it's going to continue to pump. Now, if we look, if we get a bad CPI report, we could dip back down to retest 464 and 462. But it all depends on the data. So far, we look bullish. Apple got a big breakout today. We're currently testing resistance at 208. So we actually broke past a lot of resistance levels. I'll be watching to see how we end up reacting, at least from here. So with that being said, seeing that Apple has broken this resistance, our next level to be watching for is 208 and eventually 210. I would say as of right now, we're looking a lot more bullish. It looks like it wants to push up to the 210s, but just to be safe, let's see what CPI gives us. If CPI is decent, Apple goes to 210 plus. If it's a hot CPI, we'll be dipping back down. Overall, the trend still looks bullish. For Amazon, we got a nice push as well. As you guys can see, it's approaching 188. If that breaks, we'll be looking for a nice push towards 190 plus. If we get a rug pull, we're going to be dipping down to 184, so we'll give it some time, but overall, we look more bullish. Meta is looking more bullish. We're actually breaking out very nicely right now, in my personal opinion. Our target is going to be all the way up here towards 510. Will we break 510 and start pushing up towards these highs, all the way up to these imbalances at like 515 or so? It's possible, but that depends on what we get from CPI. Will we break 510 to 515? If CPI is decent, yes. If not, we will reject. But overall, we're looking bullish. For GameStop, we're also trying to push right over here. We're at resistance at 29.5. If we break this, we'll be looking for a push all the way up to 36. We could see another squeeze if we get a decent CPI. This might affect us, but overall, it has more to do with volume and other things. So we are looking like we have potential in GameStop to bounce, but we'll have to give it some time just to be safe. Same thing with AMC. We're looking more bullish. It does look like it wants to push into the 5.5 plus area. So it also looks bullish, but we'll see what CPI gives us. All right, guys. So for NIO could get a temporary bounce or not, depending on CPI. But like I said before, unfortunately, I'm not entirely bullish on NIO, at least for the very short term. For the long term, I'm a big bull. Short term, I think it's going to come down to fill this gap. We might get a temporary bounce before we come down to fill the gap all the way over here, or we might end up doing the opposite. We might just go straight down for the gap. My gut is someone's going to rebound first, and then we're eventually going to fill the gap. But just to be safe, we'll wait and see, depending on how CPI goes. So tomorrow's going to be a massive day. We have CPI and FOMC. We'll see how things go. With that being said, guys, thank you for listening. Have a great day, and peace out.